Attention all veterans and aspiring business warriors. Get ready to charge into the world of entrepreneurship with our dynamic podcast, Vet to Vet. Join us as we bridge the generational gap, bringing you the best of both the Gulf War era and the Afghanistan War era. From the battlefields to the boardrooms, we'll share the frontline strategies, hard-earned wisdom, and insider tips to help you conquer the challenges of business ownership. Stay tuned for some straight talk, occasional humor, and valuable insights to navigate the trenches of entrepreneurship. Welcome to Vet, where the spirit of service meets the drive to success.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Vet podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Tom.
I'm Joe.
We have a unique outlook when it comes to business and entrepreneurship because he and I are both veterans from different eras, clearly, you know.
Hey.
Yeah. But very unique outlooks on how to be successful at a lot of different aspects of life. Been through the ringer, both of us, in different ways, which will, throughout the course of time, we'll be able to dive into and share a bunch of stories on that. So, yeah, thank you guys for coming to check us out. Vet to Vet podcast. Joe.
Hi, so I'm Joe. As Tom said, you know, we serve in different eras of the military, different time frames. I was in during the Gulf War. So, Tom, I think you were probably, in grade school? 1990?
Yeah, in the 90s, I think I still wore diapers.
Yeah, so I'm the old man here. Yeah, it was a different time. Spent 9.5 years in the Marine Corps. You know, and entrepreneurship was not something I ever thought about. You know, it never even crossed my mind. I thought I was going to be in forever. About 9.5 years mark, I made a little detour from the standard operating procedures. Right. Yeah. And ended up having to get out.
Or as I like to say, I zigged when I should have zagged.
Yeah. So, you know, for entrepreneurship, it really became, when I got out of the military, I had a hard time adapting to that, you know, that civilian life and dealing with civilians. So
Right. I can recall that in more ways than one at different junctures of life, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. But before we dive in too much, why don't you give us a little bit of background, a history of who Joe Worthy is, where you started, and kind of what led you through early adult or early childhood and ultimately to decide on the military.
Yeah. So you know, back in the ancient days of the 1970s, when I was a child, I'm a native of Arizona. Traveled around a lot. We were nomads for the most part. Settled in Alabama for a while. Joined the Marine Corps. Always wanted to be a state trooper.
Ooh.
So I was like,
it must have been the hats.
It was the, I don't know what it was. I just wanted to be a state trooper. It wasn't the hat. But, I figured, I'll just join the Marine Corps. Of course we'd be able to be a state trooper after that. After getting out of the Marine Corps, state trooper wasn't what I wanted to be. While I was in the Marines, I was in California, stationed with Battalion 3-1, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. Did a war deployment to the Gulf. Then became after 2 deployments, I became an instructor at the School of Infantry. Got to train a lot of privates. It was about 500 privates a week, unarmed self-defense and all kinds of stuff. When I got finished there, I went to Maine. I was there for 3.5 years as a base security advisor, anti-terrorism instructor. Got to shoot tons of weapons, beat up sailors every once in a while.
It's always fun.
Yeah. Sprayed with pepper foam. That was a good time. They got back at me. They did that to me. So.
Of course.
Then I was getting discharged. I was getting medically discharged because I had gotten injured. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, well, I got to do something. So I became an EMT. So I went from infantry to EMT, completely vast different.
I think this is something that's really important to touch on real quick. So you mentioned getting out and not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of us go through and really have a hard time trying to transition ourselves from that that service period where everything is laid out. You know a week in advance exactly what you're going to do, down to the hour and sometimes even the minute on on every given daily basis. What can you recall? What that felt like in some of the ways that you had to persevere or understand how to effectively transition from what you had thought your life was to then not knowing what to do next.
Yeah, so once I found out that I was getting discharged, I'd had orders to Hawaii, but my knees just wouldn't heal. So they're like, you're going to get out. You got about another 8 months. So I actually got extended a little bit in order to get out, and it was a huge shock to the system. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no plans of getting out. I was set to go be a platoon sergeant in Hawaii. And when they gave me that news, it was like all of a sudden just a massive weight just sat on me. And I was like, I got to do something. So, the gunny that I was stationed with, he was gone. He had just retired. So I was the last Marine on the base. I had nobody to talk to about it. And when you go and try and talk to sailors, they're half civilian as it is anyway. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had made some friends over in medical. And, I talked to them about it, and they're like, well, an EMT course is pretty quick. Why don't you do that? I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. That's not what I did. It's a vast difference from what I was doing.
You go from killing people to saving people.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, let me try that. So I went and I took the course, and I still didn't know where I belonged. I took the course. It's highly successful at it. It was very easy. For me, it was anyway. Just from, military first aid and stuff like that, just understanding, how to treat people. But when I got out, I was like, or as I was getting out, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to go work. Trying to get into a fire department could take, 6 months to a year.
Right.
But there was a local ambulance service that was over there, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go there. I happened to make friends with the director there, and he's like, yep, we'll hire you. He liked that I was in the military, getting out of the military. He liked that military leadership that I had. So he thought there would be a spot for me. Man, that was the hardest adjustment ever. Mm-hmm. People calling out. I ended up becoming their personnel coordinator, HR director. People calling out, I had no tolerance for it. If Steve made a decision and somebody didn't agree with it, they're like, I'm not doing that. What are you talking about? Knife hand came out, and it was tough. And then I was their HR, so right. Even worse. Yeah. It's putting a Marine in charge of HR is not. It's a very awkward situation for most.
Hopefully, there were no bloody noses or maybe just some hurt egos.
There was a few very pointed conversations,
sure.
though. But it was a difficult transition. I to this day I still kind of struggle with it, but. I know that as veterans, we struggle making that transition because, as you said, we're structured.
Right.
Everything is laid out for us. We know exactly what we're going to do, and we have to be that way. We have to have that discipline because everything that we do in a hot situation has to be structured. We have to know what we're doing. And man, making that change outside into the civilian world was very tough.
No, I think those are great areas to point out. I think for the non-veterans that are going to listen to this, where this can be effective if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur is taking some of the information that you gathered. Where do you see that was transferable from going through that struggle? Okay. And for the first time in your life, where do you see the similarities that you've experienced as a business owner?
So what carried me through from going from military into civilian life was the discipline that I had gained in the military. There was never an option to just not do something.
Right.
It was always decisive action. We always decisive engagement had to be moving forward always, and it was that discipline. which is what actually helped me when I did get into the civilian world, was that decisive engagement, because I always felt like my back was against the wall. I felt like I was always behind the curve. And the leadership that I had gained in the military also helped carry me through that. You know, I knew when to be forceful. The air quotes,
Right.
And I knew when to step back and allow somebody else to, have their say and move forward. And I think that's what that helped me. And that's actually what has helped me transition into entrepreneurship. Because I did struggle so much, and as we move on, we'll hear about all my careers that I've had. Because I've always struggled, I've always felt I need to work for myself. That's what I need to do. And that discipline, that leadership, and just even leading myself has helped move me towards that entrepreneurship and to decide what it is that really is going to, fit me and help me choose that career. I know that when a lot of veterans, as they get out, they have that, I don't know where I belong, I don't know what I'm going to do. There's always something that you're good at, and just being able to sit back and detach for a minute and look at the bigger picture of what I'm good at and how can I make that apply. I think that is what really carries people into the entrepreneurship, or even into a regular career in a corporate office. It doesn't even have to be a veteran. It can be anybody.
Right.
Somebody straight out of college. How many people get out of college and they don't know what they want to do? When I was working as an HR director, I heard all the time, new college graduates coming in wanting to have these high executive positions. Like, well, what have you done before?
Right.
Do you really want this? And just being able to identify that, if you detach, look at your situation, you'll be able to guide yourself through that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see the top of the mountain, but they don't understand that it's on an incline, and there are processes and ways to get there. It's there's a lot of like envy syndrome where they see somebody who's doing well, and they just know that I want that without understanding how to get it.
Yeah, you can't always just fast rope into the top of the mountain. You gotta, sometimes you gotta climb it.
That's a great analogy. And I think from my perspective in some of the different areas that I've done and been through, which we can touch on in a sec, I've definitely walked those same shoes, and I've had a lot of different transitions, between some stuff in my childhood to then stuff in the military, then contracting, and then ultimately to where I'm at. Which let's touch on that. So, let's jump back on to where we were talking about that merger. Okay, those something that I don't know a lot about. What exactly do you recall from your time deployed as in Desert Storm? Like, what was that experience like for you?
Wow. All right. So there's a lot to that. I mean, granted, the Gulf War lasted 72 hours.
Right.
I think we were on ground for 3 weeks. There's a lot of killing ants, just to get those confirmed kills in there.
Did you guys start in Kuwait?
We did. So where it actually started, and I won't try and drag this out too far, but where it actually started was we were on ship. So I was part of a MUSOC, as a mission. It was a Marine Expeditionary Unit, special operations capable. So anything that a special operations unit could do, we did as a battalion. So instead of a 16, 32 man unit, we did it as 300 people.
Right.
So, and we all specialized in something. Well, I was part of a track unit, the Amtraks. They're giant floating aluminum cans, is what they are. Massive beasts. So, if y'all think back to World War II and you see the people storming the beaches of Normandy, that was us. That's what we were supposed to do. We got orders that we were going to be, I think, one of the first 20 waves. Like the first 10 usually don't make it, It's those others that pile up that can hide behind the bodies. That's why they make it.
Right.
Well, we were in those first few waves. We're supposed to be. And we're like, this is just a bad plan. Because at that time, Saddam Hussein it was, the beaches were supposed to be more armored than the beaches of Normandy, where they knew the attack was happening. So we were pretty stressed about that. And we did a whole bunch of operations, a show of force to, show this is what we were going to do and this is how we're going to take you down. Luckily, we didn't have to do that. Because we had done all those show of forces, he had massed all of his firepower to the beach. So we came around the backside. So we actually came in through, I believe we came in through Saudi Arabia and into Kuwait.
Got it.
Went to the Al Wafra oil fields, and that's where we pretty much set up. You see the pictures of the burning oil wells over there. Yeah, I was under those as they were getting blown up. That's where we were. The biggest thing that I remember is it was a literal fog of war. We did not know what we were doing. We didn't know whether it was day or we didn't know it was night. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon was just like 3 o'clock in the morning. Pitch black because of the oil. Mm-hmm. We were covered in oil-soaked camis all the time because it was just raining oil on us. And we took artillery fire. Unfortunately, it was our own. We watched buildings get just annihilated by cobras. It was an interesting event, but at the same time, we only saw actual combat twice. Somebody thought that they would take a pot shot, and it was a fatal move on their part.
Sure.
It was again though, it was that general fog of war. We just didn't know when we were going home. We didn't know if it had ended or not. And we finally got word that, hey, it's over. We're like, well, that was quick. But then we didn't go home. We did mechanized mine sweeps. Sounds like a fun time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, mechanized mine sweeps.
Which in my experience is basically just drive around till you find it. And then hopefully
but we were in the mine finder.
Right, yeah.
So 13 of us shoved in each one of them.
Right.
So we did that for 2 weeks. The highway of death that you see on the photos, we all drove by that and stuff. And it was just an odd time. Again, it wasn't a major war. We didn't see a lot of combat, but at the same time, we still experienced a lot of those things that you do see in combat. It was kind of just awkward.
Right. Just basically feeling like you were there to do a job, so
yeah.
Whatever they said do, you were on it.
We're just doing it. Got to sleep a lot though on the track, so I learned how to sleep very well in all types of uncomfortable positions.
Anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there, done that.
5 minutes, I'm out.
Right. Yeah.
So where did you start at?
Just general background, okay. So, originally I'm from the Tidewater region of Virginia, so that's kind of where my life began, my story there. I played a lot of sports. I was very involved with athletics. Came from a family that wasn't incredibly affluent, but they did what they had to do, and kind of like most of us. Most of us normal Americans, we don't have a lot, but we make the best with what we have. So that in a nutshell was kind of my childhood. I did play a lot of athletics, and focused a lot on baseball. Baseball was definitely my love, my passion.
Still is.
Yeah, no, I do still enjoy baseball. I'm just, I can remember the day when I realized that, like, I don't think I'm going to make it to the big leagues. Because I was just an average to above average player. I had a ton of heart and passion for it, but the skill level peaked at right around like high school, like varsity level.
Yep.
And it never really progressed beyond that. I ended up injuring my labrum in my shoulder. So even attempting to try to play beyond high school was an in and out struggle because of just physical limitations. I remember going through school and everybody's going to college. Like all my friends are going to college. I remember everybody getting their letters. And it's always, at least when I was coming up, it was popular. Like, where are you going to school? Where are you going to school? And I was like, I don't know if I want to go to school. Like, this school thing kind of sucks. I did all right with school. It just wasn't something that I was like passionate about. I rather would have been playing sports or like chasing girls.
Yeah.
So, I remember having a conversation with my great aunt, and she was like, "Well, if you want to go to school, you're gonna have to pay for it because I don't have the money to send you to school." And I was like, "Well, shit, I don't have any money for school. Like, you got money for school? Can I borrow some of your money?" Like, it just wasn't a thing. So I remember the recruiter at my high school. They always had these brochures, and I think I signed up for like information, and that was it. And then my mailbox just started getting bombarded with like every recruiter for every branch, and the only one that stood out to me was the Army National Guard, because it said that we'll pay for your tuition, your college tuition on the government.
Yeah, they almost got me with that one.
And I was like, okay, well, that sounds kind of cool. And then it was like, you get federal pay and state pay. And I was like, you get 2 paychecks? And this is just dumb teenage me. So anyway, ultimately, that's the route that I ended up going down. Was I went and joined the Virginia Army National Guard at 17 years old. It was the end of my junior year. So I joined and couldn't even go to basic training yet because I wasn't 18.
Yep.
So I finished up my senior year of high school, and then a week before our graduation, that was my ship date to go to basic training. So I didn't even walk at my high school graduation. I went into the principal's office, and he said, "Here, put this on." And so like I put on a cap and gown. I don't even know whose it was. I never even bought one because I knew I wasn't going to be there. And then we did like a little picture thing, and then that photo is actually still on the wall at my old school, because many years later I flew a flag for the school.
Oh, nice.
And sent it to them, so they have that picture with the certificate and the flag. It's still on their like wall of fame with all the state championship trophies and stuff. So, but it was pretty cool.
So you did make it to the wall.
A little bit, yeah. I remember it was really cool. I saw a video while I was in Afghanistan on my first deployment, because my great aunt, I was raised by my great aunt, by the way. So she stood in for me at my graduation. My great aunt was like 70 years old at this point. And so when they called my name, she was the one that walked up there and got my diploma in front of everyone. The whole stadium started chanting USA. They're like, USA, because they knew I was gone on basic training. I was the only one in my entire class that went into the military. So that was kind of cool. Cool. It gave me goosebumps when I was gone. So yeah, that was the route that I went into the Guard, which I mean, I can't tell you that it's not for everybody, but joining the reserves or a Guard unit is probably one of the dumbest things you could do, because you're
as recruiters are grabbing their heads right now.
I know, right? Yeah, they probably hate me for this, but it's definitely was not for me. You're constantly in this back and forth between civilian life and military life, and it is an incredibly difficult area to juggle, because like you can't fully dedicate yourself to a business or really succeeding and flourishing as a civilian, or on the military side either, because you're trying to meet the obligations of 2 things at once.
Right.
And in my humble opinion, you are going to be infinitely more effective and better with 100% focus on just one thing compared to the person that's juggling more than one thing at once.
Yeah. Which is what makes us,
the whole like civilian soldier, mantra. I understand the need for it and how it's attractive to some people in some situations. It just wasn't for me.
Yep.
Okay. So, that was tough, and especially being a student, so I did I did my first deployment to Afghanistan, and came back, which, even before and after the deployment, going to school prior to my first deployment and then going to school after my first deployment was just night and day different. But school life and military life, like, they have a tough time intersecting. If you're going to do it, I would do it in the ROTC world, if that's really the way that you want to do it. But it's just not a program, in my opinion, that's really built to encourage and promote the overall success of the individual in both sectors of life.
Yeah.
Because on the military front, although yes, you're a citizen soldier, civilian soldier, whatever, they only really care and focus on what you have to contribute and do for the 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year to meet whatever their obligations are, and then the rest of the time it's like, all right, well, we'll see you next month. It's like going to like an AA meeting, like, great meeting this week or this month, we'll see you next month. There's
Hi,
not
I'm
a lot
Tom,
of,
I'm a reservist.
right, there's not a lot of follow-up. It's as long as your boxes are checked, that.
Now, when did you deploy to Afghanistan the first time?
So I was in my first semester of college, so this would have been, let's see, I graduated high school in 07, went to basic training, so it would have been around November, December of 08 was when I got the call up that I was getting Title 10 orders, so activated to active duty status for deployment to Afghanistan. I was an imagery analyst, which is like in the intelligence field, and the problem was so in Virginia where I was at, there was only 4 slots for my MOS. 2 of them were junior enlisted spots, and 2 of them were E5 slots, and that was it. So both of the E5 slots were full, and then I knew the other guy that had the other imagery analyst slot that I had, so that was it. I filled one of 4 slots, and so the state didn't know how to use us because we didn't have a SCIF, which is a secure compartmented information facility. So it's where we house and process and collect, disseminate all classified material that's related to whatever is being actioned or done on a training exercise or even in the real world. So we didn't have a facility that we could do classified nerd shit with. So then it was like, okay, well, like, what's the point of having these guys? So I couldn't get promoted because the other 2 E5 slots were full. And so basically what happened was during the invasion into Iraq, there was a little time period when the Army started getting C-12 airplanes, which, if you don't know what a C-12 is, it's like a twin-engine prop. It's a turboprop, so it's a jet engine like you would see on a normal airplane, but they turn the motors backwards, and then they use a reduction gearbox and put a prop on it. So it's a jet engine that's backwards, so it pulls in air through an inlet and it goes in the back, and then it spins the turbine wheel, which then they mount a gearbox like a transmission to, and they put a prop on it. So instead of having like this much surface area thrust, now it has this much surface area thrust. So it seats like 12 people, and a lot of wealthy individuals, they buy those. It's kind of like buying a Corvette. Okay, they're kind of luxurious, and they're fast. They go about 200 knots.
Nothing about the military ever says luxury to me.
Right. No.
Unless you're in the Air Force.
So in the military, they rip all that shit out. They take it out and they're like, nope, let's get some milk crates. And,
you don't need those seats.
Right. Exactly. So anyway, so the Army bought some of those because they wanted to do, they needed something to counter the IED threat in Iraq. So originally, they bought these planes and they put this suite of equipment in it to try to do change detection. Which what change detection is you can use different types of like imaging equipment to where if we were to go outside right now and dig a hole, because it's you guys don't know this, but it's morning here, so the ground is cold, but if we start digging the ground, it's going to be warmer underneath. So when in Iraq, when people were digging and planting IEDs, if you catch the area at the right time, you'll just be following a road, like route reconnaissance, and you could see the change detection on the ground, and you're like, hey, somebody go check that out. So then they can send EOD out, and they can look at the area that has been identified by one of these aircraft, and then they're like, yep, IED. So then they can pull it. Now you do that down a predefined route that our boys are going to go down, and now they basically have a less dangerous route to take. So that's what we did in Iraq. When I say we, I meant the Army.
Right.
Okay. So that was a pretty successful program. So come about 08, 09, the Army was like, hey, we've got this program. It seems to be doing pretty well in Iraq. Now let's do it in Afghanistan, because if it works in Iraq, it's going to work in Afghanistan, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, because they are two completely different in every way possible areas of operation. Completely different. And I've been to both.
Yeah. Environments are...
I mean, everything. The people are different. The culture's different. The terrain, climate, everything. Everything about it's different. So the Army decided to start this same program, and so I don't know how, but somehow they were like, I want those 4 imagery analysts that don't have anything to do over in Virginia. I want them, some general was like, I want them on this. And so I remember going to my first sergeant, and I was like, hey, First Sergeant, I'm in college right now. Remember last drill, you told me that, hey, don't worry about, you got these orders in that say you're deploy, or you're going to deploy. But if it's an issue, and you want to stay in college, just let me know. We'll get it squared away, because I get soldiers out of deployments all the time because they're in college. I said, okay, well, that's what I want to do, because this is the whole reason I got in. I'm going to go to college. He's like, okay. So that was in like October. So I go to the next drill in November, and I was like, hey, do you have those orders that are, whatever you said you were going to do to get me out of that deployment? He said, buddy, this is coming from the top. Like the 2-star of the state was like, nope, we need him. He's going. I was like, fuck. Okay, well, I guess now I know what I'm doing. So got activated, Operation Enduring Freedom. So I think after we went, so this wasn't an MOS. This wasn't a additional skill identifier. This was nothing. It didn't exist. This was just the Army's like, hey, we've got this idea. We think we can do it. We heard the Air Force is going to do it, but we're going to field it faster and cheaper and do it better than they can. So that's what we're going to do. And we want
with
these,
the part-time guy.
right, with the part-time, college kid that, doesn't know shit. But anyway, so yeah, that's how I got activated. So I went from training-wise, learning how to sit at a desk in a windowless building and dissect pictures and videos of areas that I've never even been to based on the training that I've been given, to now they're going to put me in an airplane and we're going to go fly and do reconnaissance missions. And the only thing that they figured was a transferable skill was the fact that I've looked at pictures
All right.
of like Russian tanks and stuff, and it's like, we're going to Afghanistan. It's different. It's we're not doing treaty monitoring. So that was that's how that area of life kind of started. I went to Afghanistan. I was an athlete. I was a baseball player, so I was young, cocky. I carried a chip on my shoulder. I remember telling my platoon sergeant, E7 at the time. I was still in E4. She went out on a mission, and granted, you have to understand, on these planes, we're not just like looking at things. We're also like doing radio comms. We're in direct contact with whoever we're supporting. It takes multitasking to a whole nother level, because we've got all these different systems that most of them require your user input. So you're trying to receive the information either visually or audibly, and then disseminate it out either over like 5 different radios or through email, and everything's on the fly and quick. So you really have to be effective at multitasking, and you're operating the equipment also. So different sensors and whatnot. So it's information overload. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. So anyway, she went out on this mission that I had put all the like hours of work. I had been in communication with the ground force commander, walking them onto the target, and they're about ready to blow in these doors, and he's like, in that world, everyone kind of eventually goes by first name basis, but I didn't even know the guy. I just talked to him on the phone before we left to go help him. He's like, "Hey, thanks, Tom. You did a fucking kick-ass job, man. Go ahead and do your handoff with your relief, and then you guys are clear to bug out," because we were at bingo fuel, which means we were out of gas. It was like, we have the exact amount to leave right now and be able to make it back and land safely. So did a quick handover with my
safely.
Did a quick handoff with my relief, which just so happened on that particular mission to be my platoon sergeant. And I remember her talking to the guy that like I had just built all this time building this great relationship with, and really communicating effectively. It's almost like being someone's eyes and ears, like playing like Pictionary, stuff like that. And she just completely just starts botching this this mission. And this guy that I was listening to still on the radio as we were flying away, he's getting pissed. Because like she's not giving him cardinal directions. She's telling him like, no, it's to the left or the right. And he's like, I don't know your fucking left and right. You're in an airplane above me. Like, give me cardinal directions. Like he was getting pissed. And like, he's got SOP people's stuff. Lives on the line. And she's just like, I'm sorry. So anyway, long story short, she flew back, and I was like, I need you to understand that you absolutely suck at your job. Like, I can't believe that there's nobody that's going to keep you accountable to a higher standard except for me. And, obviously I was a junior enlisted at the time, so she tried to give me an Article 15, but I think I got a counseling statement.
When you think about it, from a leadership standpoint, you don't only lead down the chain.
Right.
You have to lead up the chain too.
Yeah.
And sometimes our leaders need to hear that stuff.
And so I had a tendency of pissing off some people, because I would do that. Because again, I was young. I didn't understand anything other than, if I'm going to put my mind to it, I'm going to be the best at it. Like, I didn't care about the rank. I didn't care about who the commanders were. I didn't care about any of that. All I cared about is that if I was told this is important or this needs to get done, and I could see the value in it, that's
yes.
the important thing. If I could see the value in it, I'm gonna crush anybody. I'm gonna be the best at anything that I do as long as I can see the value in it.
Yeah, always gotta know the why.
And so that was a big thing that I didn't fully understand about myself at that age, but that's really kind of something that I knew about myself, but I'd always just been told that I was cocky or arrogant.
So, did you ever go full active duty, or you always stay in the reserves?
No, I stayed in the guard.
Or in the guard.
Yeah. So I did my year deployed, and then I came back, and I went back to college, which I literally felt like Billy Madison.
I would imagine there would have been some struggle.
Yeah. I went back to college, and I like I said, I felt like Billy Madison in a room of kindergartners. Like it was that was probably the biggest struggle of mine. I was so bound and determined to get through it, but I couldn't. And I think one of the big reasons that resonated with me is because it wasn't shortly after my deployment that I started getting hit up by a lot of defense contracting companies, because I remember having a conversation with the country manager for Lockheed Martin, who flew out, and I didn't know the guy, he didn't know me, but while I was in Afghanistan, I was making some relationships and rubbing some elbows, because there were a lot of civilians there, and I was like, I fucking hate civilians. What are these civilians doing here? And the only thing everybody kept doing to me was like, shh, don't talk about those guys. They're, they do like the secret squirrel, like, black side stuff. And I was like, what's the black side? Like, ooh, the dark side? I want to go to the dark side. So anyway, I started, I'd work out in the same areas that they were, and like, hey bro, can you spot me? Like stuff like that. And, eventually started a relationship with a few of these guys and started to figure out who they were, what they did. And I was like, I really like that. Like, that is some cool shit. And so this country manager for Lockheed Martin came out, and so one of the guys I've been working out with was like, hey man, I want to introduce you to this guy real quick. I was like, okay, cool. So he did. And I'll never forget, the one thing that he said from that was, he said, Specialist White, he was like, one piece of advice: be very good at this job that you're doing right now, because if you are, you're never going to have to look for another job for the rest of your life. And I was like, yes, sir. And that's what I did. So again, fast forward, I'm in college with a bunch of like incompetent idiots that like are preaching socialism. I've got professors that are lecturing on shit they know absolutely nothing about, and they're experts because they've read it in a book, which it's an opinionated book.
Right.
That it's all garbage. And then I started like digging into like, what's the average salary of a college professor? And I was like, I have an offer letter in my mailbox at my apartment right now that's for more a year than what you're already making right now, and you have tenure. And I was like, yeah, this isn't for me.
What I noticed, so when I got out, I went to college, and same thing. Felt like Billy Madison. Everybody was like way younger than I was, and I think what the difference is the experiences that we have while we're in the military, which also takes you, into, if you wanted to own your own business, it's a level of maturity, and it's so fast. Mm-hmm. It happens like almost immediately. Even just through boot camp, there's an immediate difference between who you were the day you went in there and the day that you come out.
Right.
And you spend time on a deployment, you're an absolutely different person. Right. Absolutely different person.
And I remember always being told, like, I hope you don't change. I hope this deployment doesn't change you. And I was like, I'm going to be fine, And I can remember coming back and being like, see, it didn't change me. Like I'm still me, still a normal person. And but I would definitely say like there's a maturity and like a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when something needs to get done, it's like, hey, we don't have time to fuck around. It's time to go. Let's go get this done, and then we can go, on to the next thing. Whereas like I think prior to the military, it was just like what's in it for me?
I remember when I graduated boot camp, or the day before I graduated boot camp, I went to boot camp with my best friend, and his parents came up because my parents didn't, they weren't around. So I met with his parents, and they were like my parents. And his dad goes, "Hey, can I have the salt?" And this is super minor, and it never really dawned on me until after I got out of the military. He goes, "Can I have the salt?" And yep, and I handed him the salt. Well, typically, if somebody says, "Can you hand me the salt?" Yeah, you can have the salt and the pepper and napkins and everything else. Mm-hmm. Nope, it was the salt. He wants the salt, you get the salt. That's all you get.
Yeah.
Do you want me to put it on there? Because you only get that much. And it was that level of discipline that I had already gained. And he goes, "Can I have the pepper also?" "Oh, you didn't ask for the pepper."
Right.
Here it is. And he made a comment about that it was just those little changes like that, and it's those things that we do. We see a mission, we see that it has to get done. We detach a little bit so we can see the overall picture, and then we make it happen.
Right.
And it's so for those business owners that are looking to hire military, that's what you get. You get somebody that is they understand when you tell them this has to be done. That you don't have to tell them how to do it.
Right.
They'll detach. They're gonna step back. They're gonna evaluate the whole situation, and then that's what they're going to do. You're going to get the salt.
Right. You're going to get the literal interpretation of exactly what you asked for.
They don't need the full details. They don't need to you don't need to get down into the weeds.
Right.
I need this box moved. Got it. And it's just moved.
Right. No, that's a good point. So yeah, let's see, where were we at? So I did that. Came home. I went to college. Didn't like college. I think I did 5 semesters total before I was like, yeah, nope. So then I got into the whole civilian contracting thing, which that lasted, I think, a decade after.
God.
After, yep. So
it's a lot deploying.
Yeah, yep. So I think all in all, it was like 19 deployments, 18, 19. I know it wasn't 20. So, and I've been Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Djibouti, Kenya, Somalia, Niger, Colombia, Kyrgyzstan, all over. Yeah, all over. So, and that's just that was just like work related stuff. I've backpacked Europe. I've been to Iceland. I played on a Team USA down in Cuba when I was in high school as a bullpen catcher. Let's see. Dubai. I've been to Dubai a lot. Dubai's awesome.
Love Dubai.
Yeah, Dubai's the best. So if you've ever thought about it, do it.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
Stop thinking. Just do it. It's one of the safest places on the planet, and awesome. Lots of cool stuff to do. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other places, but yeah, you get the point. 19 deployments in a lot of different locations. So I've seen a lot of different cultures. I've done a lot of things. I've been around a lot of really, really high performing individuals. You can interpret that to mean whatever you want. And then I've also seen a lot of the worldly struggles that the third world countries and whatnot deal with on a daily basis.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's something that a lot of people don't.
Yeah,
they don't get.
Right. So and I would say that that's something that a lot of our population in general struggles with is they lack perspective. A lot of problems with our youth these days are they have no perspective.
None.
The only perspective that they have that's outside of their sphere is what's on their phone. Mm-hmm. That's their only glimpse at what's happening everywhere else, is what these influencers are saying like is cool and popular, and they don't know those people. They have no idea who they are, what their background is, what their motives are, nothing. They come up with these stupid challenges and they're like, oh, well, this guy, I've followed this guy for years, and he's really popular, and if he says it's cool, and then it's something I should do too.
Right.
Whereas I know for sure your generation, but even into parts of my generation, I'm a millennial, and even parts of my generation, we still grew up outside. Like we were that like bridge the gap generation. I'm more of like what do they call it, like Gen Y, I guess, was like that 80s to 90s. So it's like I got part of my life in the tech world, but then I also had part of my life of still like climbing trees and breaking bones and, you know, doing still a lot of the older way of functioning, you know, when, you know, even before cell phones, we still had phones on the wall and, you know, pay phones and stuff like that. So
my daughter got into her car the other day. I just bought her a brand new car. Well, not a brand new car. It's a 2005.
New to her.
Yeah. Which she's wrecked already. But anyway, that's another story. So she jumps in the car and she's got her charger in one hand and her phone in the other. She goes, "Where's the USB port?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? There's no USB port in this thing."
Yeah.
You know,
how am I going to charge my phone? Yeah.
Yeah. She goes, "Well, what about the GPS?" I was like, "You don't have a GPS. You better just know the directions."
Right. Yep.
So yeah, it's just.
That's
it's
probably
totally
why she
different.
already got into a wreck.
It probably was.
Yeah.
She's probably looking at her phone, going,
Yeah,
"Okay, where do I go?"
that would be the first thing I would do. Like, look, if you don't know how to get there, you probably don't need to drive.
Right.
Okay. So,
Yeah, she's there's she can go to work. That's it.
learn navigation. You know.
So
you can't get lost in Phoenix. Everything is north, south, east, or west.
Exactly. It's in a grid.
Except for Grand.
Yeah. And everybody avoids Grand.
Yeah. So yeah, I always avoid that road anyway. It sucks.
So when you got out of the military, you went into contracting.
Yes.
Which isn't much different really than military.
No, it's like taking off your patrol cap and then putting on your ball cap.
Right. So how did you make that transition from contracting, the military environment, to your civilian life?
So I honestly want to say that contracting helped with that, because I went from excuse me. I went from being in the military and having everything laid out for me, and my opinion didn't matter. So before I touch on that, I'll use a quick a scenario that happened while I was on my first deployment to Afghanistan. So I had a warrant officer and I who were very close friends. We still touch base to this day off and on. But here's a W4. So Chief Warrant Officer 4. So this guy was like a Cobra pilot. He had been in for like 25, 26 years at this point. Great dude. His name is Steve Owens. So Steve, if you ever see this, hope you're doing well, buddy. So we used to walk the perimeter of Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. And it's gotten a lot bigger now. Well, I guess now it's still there, but yeah, we're not there. I don't think. We'll see. So anyway, at the time, this is like 2009, so we would walk the perimeter fence. And this was before they had T-wall barriers, like big concrete walls that separated like them from us. It was just chain link fence. So every other day, we would get up in the morning, and Afghanistan is weird. So their time zone is 30 minutes rather than a full hour. So the sun would come up at like 4:25 in the morning. So it was weird. We would get up at like 4:30 in the morning, right as the sun was coming up. We'd put on our camelbacks and our PT gear, and we'd walk the perimeter. It was 9.6 miles. That tells you how many times I walked the perimeter of that base. I knew exactly what the distance was. It would usually take us a few hours, but he and I had done a lot of missions together. We'd flown together a lot, and we would talk about life and a lot of different things, but I always had pushback on my side of the leadership sphere, because I didn't like my leadership. They were not effective. They were very, very poor leaders. And he said, "You know what your problem is, Tom?" And I was like, "Oh shit. Sure, sir, what's my problem?" He said, "You like to be the one that decides what's best for you. And unfortunately, as an enlisted soldier, you're never going to get to do that." He's like, "You're not wrong. I'm not telling you that the things that you see and want and strive for, like, I think you're 100% right. But you're not in a position, and you're never going to be in a position to decide what's best for you." And I was like, that resonated with me also. So So yeah, I was kind of at this like crux where I was like, well, maybe I should go be a warrant officer. But then I was like, this Army stuff though, like still kind of gets under my skin a little bit because I didn't really see a purpose. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, I believed in what we were doing, like helping women, helping children, you know, trying to free the oppressed, right? I bought off on that. But there never really seemed to be an end, you know, like once you cross this line, it's like mission over. I didn't really see that. So I was like, well, maybe it's just because I'm in, you know, the big Army. Maybe I need to do something different. So I finished my enlistment, I got out, and then, you know, I remember I had mentioned that I had all these letters that kept coming in and emails from recruiters to go work at like every 3-letter organization and contracting firm that you could possibly think of. So long story short, I finally jumped on one. And so I went down to Texas, worked at Fort Hood for a little bit, but I went right back into doing what I was doing, back, you know, working with reconnaissance aircraft. And but now as a civilian, you know, training people how to either fly on them or fix them, you know, stuff like that. So I think that helped a lot because I was dealing with civilians, so I got exposed to the corporate structure, which came with an HR department, which came with benefits, which came with 401k, and I was like, whoa, this stuff is cool, and I'm getting a lot of money. Like, I was 23 years old already with a 6-figure income, and I was like, holy shit.
And you didn't have to go to college.
And I didn't have to go to college. And I slowly started to get integrated to the civilian side of things, but obviously I still was dealing with the military, so I could still speak the language, and at least at this point where I really wanted to have influence, I went from being able to influence nobody, because anybody that I tried to tell correct information to, I was basically told to shut the fuck up and get out of the way or go color in the box. Yeah. And as soon as I put on civilian clothes, I had, you know, captains, majors, and colonels, so like 03s to 05s, sometimes 06s, that were asking my opinion and then using it for tactical advantage.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the only thing that I've wanted, was to be able to give accurate information and have it influence somebody and it work out. Like, I not only did I give you info, I gave you the correct info, and you took advantage of it, and it did exactly what I told you it was going to do.
See, the way you describe your experiences, I can see some similarities between yours and mine, but the difference is that in the Marine Corps, it's a lot of lead up the chain. You'll see the Marine Corps leaders, they actually will detach. There's a lot of a lot is put onto the team leaders, the squad leaders, even the platoon guide. You know, when in an infantry unit, where, you know, the platoon sergeant and platoon commander, they're giving out the mission, but they decentralize the command. Like, we all know our SOP, but as a fire team leader, if I see that the situation's going a certain way, I can go to my squad leader, or I can go straight to the guide or the platoon sergeant and say, hey, this is what we got going on. I think this is what we need to do. They look at it, let's do it, and then we do it. So we didn't have a lot of say in ours either, you know, our lives and what we did. Mm-hmm. But if there was a situation that was, you know, going on that the rest of them could not see, we were able to make that decision and make the command for whoever's right there in that area.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear you explain the way you got it, because just, you know, the differences in the two branches, you know, it's done differently. Like when we do military operations in urban terrain, mount training, yep, and mount environments, it is about the fire team. It's not about the squad or the platoon. Mm-hmm. You have a platoon area, you know, you might have a platoon building that you're going to take, But man, everything's down to the fire team level. It might even go down to the rifleman.
Right.
So it's very interesting the way.
And I think at least for me, it was different being, in a windowless building with a normal military structure, but then going over to aviation and being a part of an air crew, that is like you're 3 or 4 people, but you're one airplane.
Yeah.
So all of you have to, like, it's life or death, like effective communication and really being a tight-knit group.
I was just going to say, I bet you're much more tight-knit.
Yes, yeah. So because it's like that's all we have. Like we have our one aircraft, and so everything that we're doing together requires like very effective communication. And I can use an example. Even the way pilots fly. So there's 2 pilots, right? A left seat and a right seat. So if one dude needs to go take a piss, so let's say left seat's flying and right seat's just along for the ride, navigating, working radios, stuff like that. So if he's like, "Hey man, I gotta go take a piss. You have the controls." He says, "I have the controls." Then he says, "You have the controls." There's 3 times they say the same thing. "You have the controls. I have the controls. You have the controls." And then he gets up and goes to take a piss.
Yeah, and that's how we move when we're doing combat operations. That's how we move as well.
Right.
As soon as a command is given, it's repeated down the line.
Right.
Everybody repeats that command.
Right.
We're doing head counts. We start from the rear to the front. It's standard operating procedures. Communication is key.
Yeah, it's the only way to really effectively be able to not just perform a task, but it's not just about completing the task. It's about performing it well or with excellence. You know what I mean? You don't just want to get the job done. You want it to be flawless.
Right.
You want no casualties, which means injuries, dead. Like that's all it is.
Not even taking frag.
Correct. It's like you want to get out, get back, and be like, "Damn, that went well. We got exactly what we were looking for."
So we've talked for quite some time, and we've touched on a lot of things. But what I can get out of this is that all these little experiences that we've had, as a veteran, we can absolutely take those and we tie them into entrepreneurship. You and I both own home inspection companies.
Correct.
Falling under one company. And we have actually taken all the things that we know. We had stepped back, detached. We decided, I need to work for myself. I need to start my own business. And this is what my mission's going to be. And we've taken all of those experiences that we've had, and we have created 2 very successful companies. And just sitting here and talking about, what our experiences were in the past, I can see where we've driven our companies. And so for veterans that are getting out, look at what you do well. Look at what your skill sets are. And then apply them to what you want to do. And you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
You put yourself in that situation where I've got to succeed, and you will.
Yeah, so that's probably my biggest transferable skill is I just I don't know how to fail when I'm determined to do something,
Because it's never been an option.
Yeah, so that whole feeling of having your back against the wall, that I feel is where I've always functioned the best. And the funny thing is like our business has really taken off in a pretty rapid trajectory over the course of the last 12 or 18 months, which is, I mean, I don't know that anybody works more than we do. It's stupid. As far as how much we put into being able to realize that the success that we've felt, and being able to also grow our team, but that even now I still feel like my back is against the wall.
I think we always have to feel that way. I mean, what I did recently, I put myself against the wall pretty hard.
Yeah.
Jumping into the real estate industry as well, and or as a real estate agent. So I think that, we're always doing that. We're always striving to be better. And we're always trying to make sure we're putting ourselves into a position where, we're going to succeed. We're going to do more. And as we move along in this podcast, we're going to definitely talk about all those situations where, what's going to carry you forward as an entrepreneur, as a veteran or as a civilian, a kid fresh out of college.
Right.
Or even high school. I mean, we're working with somebody right now who's still in high school, and we're guiding him through, or you're guiding him through how to create a business.
Right.
And he's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I like his content.
It is pretty. It's pretty good. He's a good kid. I think especially with our youth, it's important to offer insight, wisdom, and try to be a guide. You don't have to you don't have to be a father figure, but kids are really good at digesting information because they're overloaded with information between school and social media. If they need information, they know how to access it. What I had mentioned before is they lack perspective and experience. So for us adults, and especially if you have teens, that's really, really crucial. You're not going to be able to out-nerd them because they can probably Google it faster than you can think it up.
Yeah.
They've got access to information. But being able to offer them your experiences, your stories, and your insights based on the perspective and the experiences you've had, that's what they need. They don't need to know the what, they need to learn the why.
Correct. Yep. Well, I think that was a great first episode as far as I'm concerned. A lot of great information, and really is going to help build the foundation into what we got.
Yeah, and one thing that I would ask for anybody is when you watch this podcast, send us an email, leave us some comments, shoot us DMs. If you guys have any questions or other bits of information, anything that you're looking for, topics that you might want to hear our thoughts or opinions on, shoot us a message. We'll put a link down below where you guys can find all of our contact information, and definitely reach out. And we look forward to hearing from each and every one of you.